back to channel. We are in our CVS Physiology 47th chapter from Guyton, that is the cerebral circulation. So let us see some of the glossary terms first. So first let us start with stroke. So you can see stroke is a neurological deficit which is resulting in insufficient blood flow. Strokes are of two types. So it's like we are talking about now cerebral means it's of like brain stroke. So brain stroke occurs whenever there is insufficient blood flow going on to brain. So strokes are of two types, like ischemic, that is due to low blood supply, that is due to blockage in the blood flow, and also there may be hemorrhagic because when there any accident, lot of blood loss, so like that also. Hemorrhagic, where the leakage of blood from a burst vessel compresses the surrounding tissue. So it can be like two types: hemorrhagic due to any accident, or ischemic due to any blockage. So this is the two types of stroke. So the total cessation of blood flow to the brain cause unconsciousness within just 5 to 10 seconds, because lack of oxygen delivery to the brain cells nearly shuts down the metabolism in the cells. Of course, not only to the brain, every body organ, every tissue requires it has a requirement of specific oxygen and blood flow, but brain is lot of it's so sensitive that just within, you can see, 5 to 10 seconds only we can go into unconsciousness, because the metabolism completely shut down when there is no blood flow. Because blood flow is nothing but blood is only carrying oxygen. So if there is no blood flow, in turn there is no oxygen supply also. So blood flow of brain is mainly supplied by four large arteries. So what are those? Those are two carotid arteries and two vertebral arteries. So we are having four arteries mainly: two carotid arteries and two vertebral arteries. So this carotid and vertebral artery together merge to form the circle of Willis, and this circle of Willis travel along the brain surface, like around the brain surface, and give rise to PL arteries. So what are those PL arteries? We'll see in a textbook clearly so that you can get an idea. So here you can see, so we are saying we are having four arteries: two carotid arteries, two vertebral arteries, together merge, and they go in together merge in circle of Willis, and they turn around the brain, and they finally get here, that is the PL artery. So you can see this PL artery, in turn it gives rise to branches into smaller vessels which are penetrating arteries. So you can see this is the penetrating arteriole. So see these are the branches which are coming from the major PL artery. So these branches later also have like penetrating arteries and arterioles. So now let us see what are these penetrating vessels. So these penetrating vessels are separated slightly from the brain tissue by extension of subarachnoid space, mainly called as, you can see here, Virchow-Robin space. So what is this Virchow-Robin space actually? It is a subarachnoid space. It is a brain tissue by extension of subarachnoid space. This Virchow-Robin space is formed. So this is the space which is separating the penetrating vessels from a PL artery. So here you can see this penetrating arterioles, actually they dive down directly into the brain tissue, giving rise to intracerebral arteries. So they go like this and form finally the intracerebral arteries and intracerebral arterioles, sorry. So this intracerebral arterioles, they branch further into capillaries, and the capillaries where the exchange among the blood tissues of oxygen, nutrients, carbon dioxide. Of course we know either it is any cell, normally in capillaries only the exchange of blood vessels, nutrients, carbon dioxide, oxygen, of course all metabolites, so all exchange of course occurs in a capillaries. So next move on to our theory part. Again, if any diagram involves, will come there. So we have completed till here. So now let us see the regulation of blood flow control in especially in our cerebral. So let us see the cerebral blood flow control. So mainly the normal blood flow is like about 50 to 65 milliliters per 100 grams per minute. So normally our brain mainly requires 50 to 65 milliliters per 100 grams per minute. So for entire brain, like normally we need 750 to 900 milliliters per minute. So the brain contains only 2% of body weight but receives 15% of resting cardiac output. Remember, brain contains only 2% of body. It is just a 2%, a lightweight, but it receives the 15% of cardiac output. Before, if you remember, we are discussed in our coronary circulation that coronary circulation take only 5% from cardiac output, but you can see brain is taking somewhat more, like 15% of resting cardiac output. And next, several metabolic factors which regulate. Let us see what are those metabolic factors which regulate the cerebral blood flow. So the first one, we have carbon dioxide concentration, and we have our hydrogen ion concentration, oxygen concentration, same like all blood flow regulations. We already seen before also in cerebral in cerebral blood flow constant regulation also we have same factors, right? So substances which are released from astrocytes, which are specialized. What are astrocytes? They are specialized non-neuronal cells which appear to couple neuronal activity with local blood flow regulation. So there also you can see here astrocytes. For example, here you can see one astrocyte. So this is like a star shaped structure, you can see, with many spike like structures. So this is also mainly useful for our cerebral blood flow regulation. So whenever there is increase in carbon dioxide or either increase in hydrogen concentration, this lead to increase in cerebral blood flow. While let us see 70% increase in arterial carbon dioxide doubles the cerebral blood flow. So carbon dioxide, it increases the cerebral blood flow mainly by combining first with water to form the carbonic acid. So first remember, carbon dioxide bind with water to form the carbonic acid, and after forming the carbonic acid with dissociation of this acid mainly to form the hydrogen ion, this cause vasodilation. So remember, hydrogen ion cause vasodilation, of course, because we have said that carbon dioxide increase in hydrogen ion lead to increase in cerebral blood flow. Of course, if vasodilation means width is increased, so more blood flow, so vasodilation of cerebral vessel. So remember that dilation is directly proportional to increase in hydrogen concentration up to the blood flow limit of about twice the normal. Of course, it will be in limits. If the hydrogen concentration increases, even the dilation increases, both are directly proportional. So increase in acidity of brain tissue also may increase the hydrogen ion, because acidity is mainly acid bases. Acids are mainly by adding H plus ion they convert into acid. So acidity, of course, if acidity increases in brain, even the hydrogen ions increases, and in turn we know if hydrogen ion increases, then cerebral blood flow also increases. So those substances which mainly lead to this increase in acidity of brain substance, those substances are lactic acid, citric acid, so of course it increases acidity, pyruvic acid, and also some other substances which are mainly formed during the course of tissue metabolism. So remember these two acids, that is enough, lactic acid and pyruvic acid. In the name itself you can see they are the acids, so that they increase the acidity. If acidity increases, then hydrogen concentration increases. If the hydrogen concentration increases, then of course finally our cerebral blood flow increases. So this is how we need to remember the flow chart like thing, so it can easily remember for a long time. So next, let us see the cerebral blood flow controlled by carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion. So of course we have seen from long time, increase in hydrogen concentration depress the neuronal activity. This is important. Whenever the hydrogen concentration is increased, then it may depress the neural activity, and increase in hydrogen concentration increase the cerebral blood flow, which carries hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and other acid forming substances away from the brain tissue. Because now if more acidity means, it may lead to like a lot of increase in blood flow. So instead what it does, it tries to move this substances away from the brain tissue, so that brain again can come to the normal level. So you can see increase in hydrogen concentration may depress the neuronal activity. So you can see the loss of carbon dioxide may remove the carbonic acid, of course, because if carbon dioxide is present, then only carbon dioxide bind with hydrogen, water, and form carbonic acid. So if no carbon dioxide, of course, even carbonic acid is removed from tissue. So when carbonic acid is removed from tissue, then acidity is decreased. So decrease in hydrogen concentration again back to the normal. So thus this mechanism mainly help to maintain the constant hydrogen ion concentration in cerebral fluid, and also help to maintain the normal constant level of neuronal activity. Why actually this whole process is going on? Because here you can see increase in hydrogen concentration means this is depressing the neural activity. Acidity is useful for blood whenever we want to increase the cerebral blood flow, but not always, because you can see here this acidity may lead to depression in neuronal activity. So we need to remove it. How can we remove it? By just loss of carbon dioxide. So whenever we remove carbon dioxide, carbonic acid is decreased, in turn hydrogen concentration is decreased, and even the acidity is decreased, so that again the constant level of neuronal activity will come back to normal. So now let us see what happens if oxygen is deficient in our brain. So whenever oxygen deficiency takes place, even oxygen deficiency may regulate the cerebral blood flow. Let us see how. Except during the periods of intense brain activity, the rate of oxygen utilization of brain within the narrow limit is almost exactly, yeah, except during intense activity, because whenever intense activity, higher metabolism, higher blood flow is required, means higher oxygen is also required. Except in that cases, normally we'll say, normally brain does not require that much of oxygen. You can see, just normally it requires like about 3.5, that is plus or minus 0.2 milliliters of oxygen per 100 grams of brain per minute. So just like only 3.5 milliliters uh, per 100 grams per minute. So oxygen deficiency mainly cause vasodilation. Again the same, vasodilation means increase the blood flow. So return the blood flow and transport of oxygen to cerebral tissue to normal. So it is similar to skeletal muscle and coronary vessel and other circulatory areas regulation, because we already seen this. So when our oxygen is deficient, we try to again bring it back to normal by vasodilation, and transport of oxygen to cerebral tissue will again come back to normal. So this is how you can see the relation, they're same even in our skeletal muscle and coronary vessels. So now let us see the substances from astrocyte regulate, yeah, what are the substances from astrocyte which are regulating the cerebral blood flow. Let us see. So the close coupling between the neuronal activity and cerebral blood flow is due in part to substances released from astrocytes, also called as astroglial cells. So astrocytes are also called as astroglial cells that surround the blood vessels of central nervous system. So you can see here, these are the blood vessels, right? But these are surrounded by our astrocytes. You can see these are also called as astroglial cells. So you can see our blood vessel is coming, then they are surrounding them mainly in the central nervous system. They are not found in other cerebral circulation, especially they are in central nervous system. So astrocytes are star-shaped non-neuronal cells, support and protect neurons, and of course also give the nutrition. So they have the numerous projections which make contact with the neurons and surrounding blood vessels, we have seen there, providing the potential mechanism for neurovascular communication. So it's like a neurovascular communication. So the gray matter astrocytes or protoplasmic astrocyte extend the fine process that cover most synapses and large foot process that are closely opposed to the vascular walls. So you can see these are the foot yeah, here you can see these are the foot process which are mainly close to the vascular walls, you can see. And here you can see the electrical stimulation of excitatory glutaminergic neurons mainly lead to increase in intracellular calcium concentration in astrocytes. So here you can see that picture. So increase in calcium because of uh, increased stimulation of glutaminergic neurons. If glutaminergic neurons are excited more, you can see here glutaminergic neurons, they're excited more. So because of this, there is increase in calcium inside the astrocytes. So what happens if calcium increase in astrocytes? Foot process mainly, and the vasodilation of nearly arterioles. So the arterioles which are nearby to them, they get vasoconstricted. So this is like, because of glutaminergic neuron stimulation, increase in intracellular calcium in foot process of astrocyte, leading to vasodilation of nearby arterioles. So vasodilation mediated by vasoactive metabolites which are released mainly from the astrocytes, like nitric oxide, metabolites of arachidonic acid, potassium, adenosine, and others are generated by astrocytes in response to stimulation of adjacent excitatory neurons, and these are important in mediating local vasodilation. So you can see here directly the same process is given, because of excitation of this glutaminergic neuron, glutaminate is released, and it is in turn leading to increase in intracellular calcium in astrocyte. Because of increase in intracellular calcium, it leads to release of vasoactive metabolites like mainly nitric oxide, arachidonic acid, products, potassium. So because of all this release, this is leading to dilation. Dilation means increase in width of vessel. So because of increase in width of vessel, there is more blood flow, that is increase in blood flow. Here we are talking about now cerebrum, that is our brain. So increase in cerebral blood flow. Now let us check out the measurement of cerebral blood flow and also the effect of brain activity on the flow. So let us see. So cerebral blood flow is mainly measured by Fick's principle. So it is mainly based on inhalation of nitric oxide, which is mainly developed by Ketty and referred as Ketty method. So here we are using two methods like Ketty method and Fick's principle. So in Ketty method, they're saying we need to inhale the nitric oxide, what happens, and in fixed principle, what happens, let us see. So radioactive xenon is injected into carotid artery. So into carotid artery, we are injecting this radioactive xenon. So this radioactivity of each segment of cortex is recorded as radioactive substance passes by the brain tissue. So as we have injected this into carotid artery, now it goes into the brain. After it goes into brain, we will check out where that radioactive substance is going into each segment. So 256 small radioactive scintillation detectors are pressed against the surface of cortex. So we will press it against the cortex, and especially remember 256 radioactive scintillators. So rapidity of rise and decay of radioactivity in each tissue in direct measure of the rate of blood flow to that segment. So in each segment we will see how much it is increasing and how much it is decreasing, and we will measure it. So by this technique, the blood flow to each individual segment of brain changes like about 100 to 150% within the second. Just within the second, it is changing 100 to 150% in response to change in local neuronal activity. So because of local neuronal activity changes, the brain in each segment it is changing. So making a fist, if you make a fist like this also increases the cerebral blood flow to the motor cortex of opposite side of the brain, because they're like opposite side. Now if you like, you can see here, now I am making a fist in my right hand. So then what happens, the blood flow now increases in my opposite side of brain, means towards left side of my brain. Now the blood flow increases. So even now if you are reading book, of course if I am reading this papers now, so reading book also increases the blood flow, especially in visual areas of occipital cortex and also in language perception area of temporal cortex. So this measuring also is useful for localizing the origin of epileptic attacks because of local brain blood flow increase acutely and markedly at the focal point of each attack. So even by this measurements, not only we can find out the changes in blood flow, but also we can mainly find like this epileptic attacks, because in epileptic attacks there will be more blood flow in that specific area where the attack has happened. So by these measurements we can also find that. And blood flow and neuronal activity in different regions of brain are mainly assessed indirectly by functional magnetic resonance imaging. So as we have MRI like that for this to find out mainly the blood flow and also neuronal activity which is going on in the different region of brain, we mainly use this. Remember that functional magnetic resonance imaging, that is in short form called fMRI. So this is a method which is mainly based on observation of oxyhemoglobin and also deoxyhemoglobin in blood behave. They both actually, so here we see oxyhemoglobin means oxygen bind with hemoglobin, deoxyhemoglobin means oxygen without hemoglobin. So we will measure these values, and in blood they both behave differently in the magnetic field. So alternative MRI method called arterial spin labeling ASL is used to provide a more quantitative assessment of regional blood flow. So to find accurately, perfectly the regional blood flow, we can also use another system like arterial spin labeling. So ASL works by manipulating the MR signal of arterial blood before it is delivered to different areas of blood. So before it is entering only, we are checking how much it is. So by subtracting, so as we find here the value of blood, arterial blood before only. So here what we do is by subtracting the two images in which the arterial blood is manipulated differently, the static protein signal in the rest of the tissue subtracts out, leaving only the signal which is arising from the delivered arterial blood. Means what they are saying is, now we will already subtract the first what we do is, before blood enters it only we will take one value, and after the blood enters we will take one value. So by subtracting this both, what we get is where the blood has entered correctly, only that side we will get the signal. So by that we can find out approximately correctly like where the, you can see, leaving only the signal which is arising from the delivered arterial blood. So where only the arterial blood has entered, only that signal we will get. So arterial pressure is increased mainly during excitement, exercise, and arterial pressure is mainly decreased during sleep. This is we are talking in cerebrum. In cerebrum, our arterial pressure is increased during excitement and exercises, whereas in arterial pressure is decreased mainly during sleep. So cerebral blood flow is regulated between 60 and 140 millimeters of mercury. That is, the mean arterial pressure can be decreased as low as 60 or also sometimes as high as 140 millimeters of mercury without any significant change in cerebral blood flow. There is no change in blood flow, but only this values can be regulated according to the limits here. So if there is increase in blood pressure, some people with hypertension, the auto regulation is done even when the mean arterial pressure is high, like about like it's in the value of 160 to 180. There is extreme constancy of map between 60 and 80. So we will here what they're saying in cerebrum, we will not mainly target on this map, that is mean arterial pressure. We will see mainly the auto regulation in hypertension patients even if their map is like very high. So what they're saying in cerebral circulation, we don't give that much importance to mean arterial pressure. So if the mean arterial pressure falls below 60, the cerebral blood flow becomes severely low. But this is a condition where if the mean arterial pressure falls below 60, then it is very dangerous. So the cerebral blood flow becomes severely low. So sympathetic nervous system mainly pass by the superior cervical sympathetic ganglia in the neck, and then to the, now let us see the neuronal function. Let us start the neuronal part from second part.